Time to arrive. I'm going to share the screen so I stop obsessing about the speaker view. And I would love to know in the chat, a lot of you guys I know, and a lot of you guys are also new to me. I would love to know what you're excited to learn about today. What motivated you to come to the class? Was there something in the email I sent or the message you saw online that made you think this is for me? Gonna get the slideshow. Okay, here we go. Chris says, how to best combat my inner critic. Very good question. Yeah, kind of the number one obstacle sometimes. Hey, Kim, nice to see you. Hey, Suzanne, good to see you too. How to use large swaths of time effectively to do some writing. Yeah, I really feel that as well. I just actually booked some time at a cabin in March where I'm hoping to use some swaths of time. Jen, hey, it's nice to meet you. Boost for the start of the year, for sure. Sarah wants to get out of perfectionist mode. Excellent. Oh, we got lots of folks. Hi, Bethany. Moving past the kind of waiting time to read, waiting on a result before I get going. Kim's realigning her writing life, hoping to get through a revision in the next 6 months. Me too, Kim. I just got notes back from my editor, so I'm back in it. Pursue writing goals with an extreme shortage of time and daily overwhelm. I think a lot of us can relate to that one, Lauren. Uh, Catherine wants to learn how to energize around writing and stop procrastinating. Yeah, hey, nice to see you. Completing a draft without wanting to keep starting over. Oh my goodness, we're definitely going to talk about that one today. That was my classic downfall. So on the call today, Sarah is going to be assisting me, so I don't have to monitor the Zoom room too much. I will try and keep an eye on the chat to the best of my ability. However, I know from past experience that when I get into teaching, sometimes I forget about the chat. So Sarah may jump in to remind me if a good question comes up and I haven't seen it. Um, okay. Well, let's get into it. There may be some people still filtering in, but Sarah will be handling all of that. Okay, so I'm going to start the way that I start my coaching sessions, which is by getting grounded. As I think Lauren mentioned in the chat, we're all dealing with kind of a lot of overstimulation and overwhelm at this time. So just find a comfy seat in your chair. We're just going to start by taking five deep grounding breaths. So I'm just going to have you take a deep breath in, hold at the top, then a nice long exhale. Let's do another one just like that. Deep inhale, hold at the top, nice long exhale. Just take three more of those at your own pace. Just feeling yourself drop down out of your head where it's very busy. Just start to feel some sensations in your body. Maybe the temperature of the air in the room, the feeling of the clothes on your skin. Maybe just feel 10% more calm and relaxed than you did when you hopped on this call. Thank you. I find that's always very helpful for me too when I'm starting a session or about to teach. Stops my mind from going a mile a minute and actually just be present with you all. Um, Okay, so I'm going to start with a quick intro. Some of you already know me, some of you are brand new to me, but I'm Jamie DeBlanc. I run Fresh Ink, where I help talented but struggling writers overcome their writing blocks so they can reach their lifelong writing dreams. And this is a very personal mission for me because this is the journey that I have been on, struggling with my writing a lot, but really wanting writing success. I really specialize in working with writers who struggle with anxiety, perfectionism, and imposter syndrome. You can wave your hand in the air if you relate to any of that. There we go. In the masterclass, I'm going to be explaining the 5 keys from moving from writing avoidance to writing alignment. I'm also going to be opening up access to enrollment for my 5-month coaching program, which opens in April. And I'm going to end with some live coaching. I'll have time to take some questions from you guys and talk you through whatever particular problem you are having around writing avoidance at this time. Why stick around? I've been coaching writers since 2016 with an approach that blends craft education, mindset transformation, publishing expertise, and community building. Another reason to stick around is I'm giving away a free 60-minute coaching session. I'll be doing a drawing for that at the end. Um, with my coaching, I'm very proud of the outward results that my clients have achieved. They've gotten published for the first time, completed full manuscripts, won writing grants and contests, started querying agents, gotten into MFA programs, and published novels and memoirs. But as proud as I am of all of that, sometimes I think that the most meaningful work that I do with clients are the inward wins that they gain through the coaching. They work through perfectionism and imposter syndrome. They access more calm, confidence, and joy in the writing process. They get to connect with a supportive, creative community and really step into their identities as writers. A little bit about me. About 15 years ago, I was not a writing coach. I was a middle school English teacher. I was very blocked. I was very insecure about my writing, and I only had 3 chapters of a novel written, which I'd sort of squeezed out during the summers of my teaching. Um, 15 years later, I'm now a productive writer with a 2-book deal from a major publishing house and some interest in adapting my debut novel into a miniseries. The coaching strategies and skills that I use in my coaching program, I have gained from testing them out on myself and experiencing their value firsthand. So I'm drawing from the lessons I've learned from my own coaches and mentors, as well as mindset training that I've gone through. And actually, a lot of lessons from therapy make their way into coaching as well. I have 10 years of coaching experience, 6 months of training in philosophical mindset coaching. I bring a trauma-informed approach to guiding writers who are talking about sensitive subject matter in their work. This is both memoir and fiction. And I have about 20 years of writing experience that give me deep insight into writing and the writing industry. So my goal today, I think all of you came here because there's some part of your writing process that is feeling stuck. So my goal is to help you identify what the source of that stuckness is, and it might be a little bit different from what you think it is, and offer you some tools and strategies for moving forward and getting past that particular block. I am recording the session, so you will get access to this later if there's anything on the slides that you want to revisit. Just keep an eye out for the email that will come through either later today or tomorrow. And I'm also going to be talking a little bit about my Writer's Transformation Project program. This is my 5-month coaching program that's the core of what I do at Fresh Ink. You'll get an opportunity to sign up for that program or sign up for a consult with me at the end of this class. Um, the spring program is already halfway full, so I'm actually opening up enrollment, not just for the spring program that starts in April, but I'm opening up enrollment for the fall program that starts in October. More on that later. Okay, sort of getting ahead of myself in the slides. Okay, our agenda for today is to go over the 5 keys from moving from avoidance to alignment. We're going to look at some of my clients' results who have used these strategies that I'm going to be talking about. You'll get a bit of an overview of the Writer's Transformation Project, and then we will end with some live coaching. I'm just going to take a breath. I have cedar allergies today, so I have like a really dry mouth. I'm seeing lots of nods, and other people have cedar too. It's really brutal if you're in Austin. My sympathies. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this already. Where I am now in my writing life, I'm pretty happy with. I'm working on my second book in a two-book deal. It should be coming out later this year. I have six story publications. I've gone to two fabulous residencies. I'm hoping one day to see my debut novel on Netflix or HBO. But 15 years ago, it was a really different story. I had no time or energy to write. I had very little hope around ever getting published. I had a deep fear of submitting. I was not telling anyone that I wanted to be a writer. I was certainly not showing my writing to anybody. And when I saw other writers around me being successful, I felt resentful. So, over the course of 10 years, I figured out what was going wrong in my writing process. And I figured out that there were five areas that I really needed to strengthen. If all of these were working well for me, then I could be productive, I could move forward, I could gain writing success. But if I was experiencing shakiness in either any of these areas, I would start to see things break down. So these keys were mindset, structure, process, community, and guidance. And I'll be going deeper into each of these in the masterclass and what I mean specifically when I say structure or a process. And then one of my key skills as a coach, I think, is distinguishing between the perceived problem that one of my clients comes in with and what the actual problem is that they're having. And there is a difference between the two sometimes. And so we'll be talking about that in the class. I'm going to introduce you to some client avatars. To protect my client's privacy, I have changed the names of these people and some details, but these are all real clients. These are all real strategies that I have used with them and real results that they've gotten out of the coaching. So the first client I'm going to introduce you to is Jen, and her problem is lack of time. She yearns to write, but there never seems to be time for it. And then even when there is time, writing never happens because she finds herself prioritizing other things. So you might be experiencing this problem if you feel stuck, if you begin to feel hopeless about writing, if you criticize yourself for being unmotivated, or if you start to doubt yourself and think, maybe I just don't want this badly enough. If any of this is resonating with you, go ahead and put a one in the chat so I know that I know who is also grappling with this problem. Okay, plenty of ones. Dan also asked a question. He said, is writing your main source of income? Yeah, this is a big problem for all writers, I think. Writing from my novels is a partial source of income. And so I split that between writing and coaching. But I think for most writers, a big thing to grapple with is how to support themselves and also pursue their creative dreams. Um, we may talk more about this at the end, Dan, so just know that I'm bookmarking that question. Okay, so with Jen, one of the things that I could have done with her was start talking about time management and like looking at her schedule and seeing where there are pockets of time to write. But I actually didn't think that Jen's problem really was lack of time. And kind of the clue there was that even when she did have time, she wasn't writing. So I think that actually the fix for Jen was not in time management, but was in mindset. So with Jen, the work that I did was addressing mindset through exploring her commitments and her counter commitments. When you enrolled for the class, you got access to a free video. If you want to deep dive into counter commitments and counter commitments, that's in that video, that's in your email inbox. But basically, what this is your commitment is the thing that you have consciously say to yourself that you want to do. Like, I want to finish my novel, or I want to get a short story published this year. But most of us have a secret counter commitment that is working against our commitment. For Jen, we figured out that it was very important for her to be a good wife and mother and to feel like she was bringing in income from her business. And so, in her mind, her commitment, which was to really seriously pursue writing, and her counter commitment were at odds. She did not believe she could do both. If she invested in her creativity, she thought she was going to be undermining her ability to be strong in these other areas in her life. So, part of our work in coaching was to help her see that those two things weren't actually mutually exclusive. And I did that through a series. If those of you who have worked with me before know that I do a lot of nervous system regulation, visualization techniques, and rewriting mental stories that have people have running through their heads. I also helped Jen understand her past writing wounds and how they affected her mindset today. Um, she had had a professor in the past who'd been very, very critical of her writing. So anytime something happened in her writing life that was not ideal, it sort of reinforced this story running through her head that she was not a good writer and she was not going to succeed. Um, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but I was certainly relating really hard when Jen was talking about this. Um, Human brain is really interesting. When we have a story running through our head, we will search for evidence to confirm that story. So if the story running through our head is, I am not a good enough writer, if we get a rejection from a literary magazine, say, that confirms our story. And we're like, ah, yes, my story is true. I am not a good enough writer. So a lot of my work in coaching is to help clients rewrite that underlying story that consciously or unconsciously they are telling themselves. When you have a positive story running through your head, for example, I am going to get published. It may take a long time, but I know I'm going to do it. When you get feedback from the universe, you are looking for evidence that confirms that story. So if you get a rejection from a literary magazine, you might think, oh, wow, that's too bad, but I know I'm going to get published. So this is not evidence that I'm a failure at what I'm doing. So the result for Jen was that addressing the mindset piece helped her start writing more consistently because writing felt less negatively charged. She developed a more positive self-image as a writer, and she was able to finish, revise, and submit a piece of writing for the first time in years. All right, our next client is Ray, and their problem was self-doubt. Ray felt like a failure because they hadn't published anything yet. And although they wanted to be a writer more than anything, every time they put words down on paper, they were disappointed by the result. So you might be experiencing this problem if your writing feels slow and painful, if you hate everything you write or are highly critical of it, and if you agonize over writing even a few sentences. If this describes you, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat. Anyone here barely eking out a few sentences in a long writing session? Okay, yes, there we go. I can really relate to this. I have been there and it's really hard. So I could have worked with Ray on self-doubt, on the mindset around that, but what I thought was really happening here was a misunderstanding about process. So, like most writers, Ray had kind of an unrealistic view of what a first draft should look like. I think all of us would love for our first draft to look pretty close to a final draft. And we're pretty disappointed when the first thing that comes out is not that. If we have a story running through our head that we're a bad writer, the first draft immediately confirms that. And we'll be like, oh, let me not put words on paper and confirm for myself that I'm a bad writer. That's terrible. Um, so what I do with writers is I actually help them understand what a realistic drafting process looks like through looking at the process of visual artists, which I think is much more, um, it just makes you more sane to think about this way. So if you guys know any painters or have ever studied painters, you know that when they are drafting, they start with a sketch on like just a loose piece of paper or a piece of cardboard in the studio. Once they've done a couple sketches and they're starting to gain confidence, they'll create a study. And a study is still not the final painting. A study is a series of experiments to see how the painting might start to come like to fruition, like in a more concrete way. And it's only when they've done sketches and studies that they then have the confidence to go to a big canvas, a big expensive canvas, and put some expensive oil paint on it and make what is much closer to what is in their head as their magnum opus, their big dream. So I find that helping writers understand that the first draft is just a sketch, the second and third drafts are just studies, and that you're really not going to get to that very satisfying sense of being a good writer till much later in the process is actually very soothing for writers. They start to feel like, oh, okay, if my first draft looks like this, I'm not a failure. Through patience, I can start to see this work grow and become better. Um, so through working with Ray, they were able to develop more humor and compassion around those early drafts, rediscover a sense of creative experimentation and play, and actually start finishing pieces and understand like through finishing and revising, that's where the confidence comes in. There's a great writing coach whose name I'm not going to remember right now, who said that confidence is not writing a first draft and being really pleased with it. Confidence is writing a first draft, being horrified by it, and then being confident that you can take that through your series of sketches and studies to a beautiful final draft. And I have to keep that in mind a lot because I create a lot of horrible material in the drafting process for my novels. And in order not to feel completely demoralized like that, by that, I have to remember sketches, studies. So, through understanding this process better, Ray started writing with more freedom and curiosity. They were able to write multiple pages in each writing session rather than just a few sentences. And they finished the first draft of their novel, which was pretty huge. All right, our next client is Mandy, and her problem is overwhelm. She wanted to write a novel, but felt frozen because it was just such a huge undertaking. She thought a lot about the novel, but every time she opened the document, it was too frightening, too overwhelming. She shut it down, went for a walk instead. So you may be experiencing some of this if you find yourself creatively frozen. This one is my favorite one. Frequently revise the opening of the story, but can't get past the beginning. Hey, Kim, I see you. Find yourself frustrated and mentally flooded when you think about what it will take to finish the project. If this is you, go ahead and put a 3 in the chat. Mm, lots of threes. I think this is definitely something I can relate to when you're writing a novel, whether you haven't written it yet or you've already written it and now you have 300 pages of mess to work with. It can really flatten you, the idea of how to move forward. So again, this could seem like maybe a mindset problem, but in my experience, the best way to address this is to work on structure. So with Mandy, my goal was to help her set up a measurable, manageable path to completion. And I am generally not someone who loves math, was always terrible about it. But this is one circumstance where I think math is really helpful for writers in order to set supportive, realistic deadlines. So, what I do first is I help writers figure out what their current pace is. So, with Mandy, she was writing about 4 pages a week. And we helped her see, like, okay, if she wants to create like a 200-page manuscript, that would be about 50 weeks of work. And just knowing that is very helpful, very grounding. And we can say, okay, is it reasonable for you to keep creating 4 pages a week and be done in almost a year? Or is it possible that we could figure out how to make this pace a little faster so you could finish a little sooner than that? I also really recommended that she call on social support to increase accountability, insight, and inspiration um, by creating what I call an anchor session, which is one session per week where you're writing with at least one other person by your side. You're creating that sense of structure and regularity that help keep you on track. If you're in isolation, and I experienced this so much in my early years of writing, there's a sense of formlessness to it. Nobody's checking in on you, so you might as well do something else rather than write. Um, when I started having an anchor session with my writing buddy, who's still my number one writing buddy today, um, it changed everything. That structure added so much support and meaning to my life. And if anyone here has ADHD, they have a term for this, which I think is body mirroring. Am I getting that correct? Which has been proven to be very, very helpful for focus. Also with Mandy, I worked on making her goals more body doubling. Thank you, Claire. I knew I was getting it wrong. Make her goals more process oriented rather than outcome oriented. Um, and I learned about this through reading James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. He says when we set a goal and that goal is very far from where we are today, that goal actually starts to make us very unhappy. So you're like, oh, my goal is to revise this novel, but I still haven't started revising page one. Every day that you wake up and the novel's not revised, you feel a sense of lack, you feel a sense of disappointment. And that sort of demoralization is what makes people quit. But if your goal is process oriented, that actually allows you to feel successful in the moment. So a process oriented goal might be I'm showing up 3 times a week to work on my revision for an hour. And every time you do that, you are meeting your process oriented goal and you are successful. The outcome is going to be the same, right? Whether your goal is outcome oriented or process oriented. But process oriented is going to keep you feeling far more positive and uplifted and energized. It's sort of like if you had a goal to lose 20 pounds and every day you would wake up and be like, well, I still haven't lost the 20 pounds yet. I feel terrible. But if your goal was, I'm going to go to yoga or like the gym 3 times a week, every week that you're going to the gym 3 times, you're like, wow, I'm doing so good. I'm getting stronger. Um, and it's a small difference in the way that you think about the goal, but I think it has a tremendous impact. Just checking that I'm not talking too much, which I probably am. So the result for Mandy is she started making consistent headway on her book draft, which is a collection of essays. She became more motivated and uplifted by socializing with and working alongside other writers. And she finished several new essays and began submitting them for publication. Okay. Our next client avatar is Jim, and his problem is uncertainty. He's really not sure whether his story is working or if anyone other than him would be interested in reading it. And he finds himself perplexed about how to proceed with his writing. If this is you, go ahead and put a 4 in the chat. I think this is something that I struggle with a lot when I'm drafting. I really have no clue when I'm drafting what's good about my work or not. I think I'm working on a novel draft. I'm like, before I show it to anyone, I'm like, I'm not sure if this is all nonsense or what. So symptoms of uncertainty are deciding you need to study more before you can write more of your project, spend hours researching rather than writing, frequently change your approach to your story, and have several drafts written that you have trashed. Um, yeah, Kim says I thought no on 4, but that third bullet point. Yes. So with Jim, the fix for this problem was guidance. And so what he really needed was to get feedback on the strengths of his story as well as the areas that needed more development. Um, he needed to receive tailored lessons on craft. So, not to keep taking endless workshops or reading endless books on craft, but to have someone, someone, a coach, someone with expertise read and say, oh, actually, if you worked on this one specific skill, this would elevate the draft a lot. And then finally, I really helped him learn to reconnect with his intuitive self-editor versus always relying on external approval. And this maybe sounds contradictory to those first 2 bullet points, so I want to explain more. This may have happened to you if you've ever taken a story or an essay into a workshop and you've got 12 pieces of feedback on that piece, and you've then tried to revise the piece to please everyone in the workshop. And I've done that before. What that does is it takes away everything that's unique and original about my piece and kind of flattens it in the hopes that everyone will now like it. And I think what's very helpful is to, instead of trying to take feedback from 12 people, trying to take feedback from a small number of people who are closer to your ideal reader. Either they already love your genre or what you're trying to do, or they're a reader who's really tuned in into helping you reach your goals. A lot of readers will try and help you write a story that they want to write or that they would want to read, and that is not super helpful. Um, so one thing I do with clients is help them when they're receiving feedback, tune into what kind of feedback feels in line with what they're trying to do with the story and what kind of feedback feels like it's actually pulling them further away from what they're trying to achieve. So Jim really increased his confidence in his storytelling skills and his instincts. He saw his stories improve a lot through multiple rounds of revision, and he got his first short story publication in Narrative Magazine. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but for someone who's submitting for the first time, that's kind of a slam dunk. So he was very happy with that outcome. And our last client avatar is Jose, and his problem was imposter syndrome. So he did not feel like a real writer. His strong suspicion was that the only people who get published are either, born creative geniuses or they have connections in the publishing industry. And so he was avoiding both writing and telling people that he wanted to write. So this may be true of you if you feel embarrassed to call yourself a writer, if you talk yourself out of finishing or submitting your work, or if you feel really envious of other writers' successes. If this is you, go ahead and put a 5 in the chat. I was always super jealous of other people getting published and getting residencies and getting prizes. I was like, oh, why is that not me? So the fix for Jose was community. And I found this to be true for myself too. That feeling of imposter syndrome really dissipated when I connected with my literary community. So in the program, I really encouraged Jose to connect to a community of writers with a range of writing experience. So both beginning writers all the way up to advanced, so he could start to see that this was a spectrum that people moved around. It was not, or moved along, sorry. It's not that you're either born good or not. It's something that you work towards over a period of time. He started attending regular writing meetups. He shared his work with his coaching cohort and got enthusiastic, supportive feedback on his story. And so the result for him was that he felt seen as a writer and began gaining confidence, started to understand writing success as a continuum rather than a pass-fail situation. And he felt encouraged enough to submit to a writing contest where he was named a finalist. So I'm going to give you a highlight now of some real clients, and that, like, these are all avatars, but these are going to be clients that have agreed to let me share their name and what they gained in the program. In fact, one of them I think is here today. Susan, I'm going to be bragging a little bit about you. So Lindsay had always wanted to write a novel draft, but she was stuck in that revising chapter 1 and 2 over and over again. In the program, she transformed her understanding of the drafting process, started attending community write-ins. She finally gained momentum with her story and began producing a lot of pages each week. And she completed and began revising her novel draft. Susan worked through issues of imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and self-doubt. She finished a memoir that she'd been trying to finish for over a decade. She completed a memoir proposal and query package. She is currently querying her memoir and receiving manuscript requests from agents. And here's Mark. I've put a little star at the bottom here because he participated in multiple sessions of the coaching program, which is why you see he had such extensive results. When I started working with Mark, his perfectionism was so intense that he could not complete any of his short stories. He had, I don't know how many story starts, lots, but none of them were finished. So he began regularly drafting, revising, and submitting work. He got his first short story published, and over the next year, got six more publications, including one in Electric Lit. He was nominated for two pushcart prizes, as well as Best of the Net. He had a short story go viral on Twitter. He won a scholarship to Texas State's MFA program, where he is studying now. And here are some other client achievements. The Goldenberg Prize for Fiction, We Need Diverse Books grant, scholarship to an MFA program. Ashley and Emily, who I was working with before the program became a formalized thing, they both landed agents who went on to get them their first book deals. So a question that I get a lot about coaching is like, do you have to have a coach or can you do this work on your own? I worked on my own for the first, I guess, first 10 years that I was really trying seriously to get published. And I did slowly work out a lot of this on my own through research, therapy, classes. I finally finished my first book. I got an agent and I went out on submission with that novel. So, yes, it is possible to do this work on your own. All in all, it took me about 5 years to get to the submission stage with my first novel. I still did not have a book contract because that novel did not sell, which is a writing wound I then grappled with for many years after. What I have found through personal experience is that coaching helps you get there faster. I think it was right after the pandemic, I signed up to work with a writing coach. For a 6 month program. And because I had finished a manuscript, I knew I had to query agents, but I wasn't able to send those queries out, y'all. The writing wound was too strong. So in her program, I was able to address those past creative wounds, overcome some longstanding mindset problems, particularly around fear of failure. I began querying my second novel, and I landed a new agent who would later get me my two-book deal. So in 6 months, I was able to make a tremendous amount of progress. And I realized in retrospect that the slog that I'd done for 10 years before that was maybe unnecessary. Maybe I could have sped it up a little bit. So that is actually what inspired me to create the Writers Transformation Project, which is a 5 month coaching program that really aims to, instead of having writers work, slog along for 5 years struggling with all these issues, like help them in 5 months overcome significant obstacles and make big strides in their writing life. The writing coach that I worked with was really transformational for me. She did such great work around mindset that I hired her for another program. But I said, this time, instead of coaching me, I want you to teach me how you coached me. And so she taught me so many of her mindset insights that I now use in the coaching program. So I do believe that a structured program offers steady development and transformative results. I'm a big believer in that. So in the Writers Transformation Project, I really focus a lot on those 5 keys that we just talked about: mindset, rewriting the story you've been telling yourself about your creative dreams; process, gaining a more nuanced perspective on the writing process that better supports your long-term writing development; get access to a framework that supports your writing success through clear, measurable, and attainable goals; and get tailored guidance from a supportive, insightful coach to help you elevate the quality and impact of your writing. As I'm talking, I realize I'm doing the thing where I get so involved in what I'm talking about that I forget some logistics. So I'm going to put some links in the chat here. If as we're talking, you're thinking, oh, I want to Want to sign up for a consult, there's the link in the chat there to do that. And if you are a coaching alumni or a client who's already completed a consult with me, I will put a link there that you can directly put down your deposit if you're wanting to do that. The final key is community. Transform your self-image and outlook by connecting with a supportive community of writers. Um, in addition to my program having one-on-one coaching, which is kind of the core of the program, you're part of a cohort of 8 writers, and you have 4 seminars with them where you get to connect and really increase the joy, inspiration, and motivation in doing what you love to do. So the nuts and bolts of what you receive in the program are 20 one-on-one coaching sessions, 3 group seminars, 1 author visit, unlimited email support, and a celebratory graduation reading. And with the one-on-one coaching sessions, before each session, you can get up to 15 pages of double-spaced writing reviewed by me before each session. Sometimes I work with writers who are wanting longer pieces of feedback, say they want me to read a full manuscript. In that case, you have the opportunity to swap out some of your coaching sessions for feedback or editing sessions. So is this program for you? It may be if you have a story you're passionate about telling, if you dream about publication, but you aren't sure yet how to get there. If, despite working hard on your writing, you find yourself hitting the same roadblocks over and over again. And finally, if you have the capacity to make a sustained commitment to your writing this year. So, one-on-one coaching, you guys are probably aware, is a more significant investment than, say, a workshop or even a group coaching program. So, I think a good question to ask when you're thinking about making this kind of commitment is, of course, what is the risk of investing? That's the question that most people ask themselves, and what I asked myself when I was about to invest in coaching. And of course, the risk for me being, oh, I could invest in this coach and still not get the thing that I wanted. Um, but I think the second question to consider, which is not as obvious, it wasn't obvious to me when I was making this decision, is what is the risk of not investing? And for me, I think at the time when I was making this decision, the risk of not investing was that I was going to stay stuck in the same place I was for years and years, and that I was not going to get up the courage to actually query my second novel, which would have prevented me from ever getting a publishing contract. Um, so yeah, 2 questions to consider as you are making a commitment to your writing. The value of the Writer's Transformation Project, you get a lot in this program. The 20 one-on-one coaching sessions, very high value, 3 group seminars, and an author visit with a published writer who comes and shares their insight and answers your questions about the publication journey, unlimited email support, a graduation reading, and there's also a bonus gift if you end up signing up for a consult or putting down the deposit in the next 48 hours. I'll give you access to a free masterclass, Write Like an Artist, which I mentioned earlier in the masterclass. It's about that concept of sketches and studies and how to implement that in your own writing. So the total value is 9,875. Your investment would be 8,500 if paying in full, or 1,760 per month if paying monthly. Returning clients, you get a significant discount. It'd be 6,750 if paying in full, or 1,400 a month if paying monthly. And again, that bonus gift, if you are signing up for a consult or putting down a deposit in the next 48 hours, you will get access to that free masterclass. Trying to get slides arranged here. So with the consults, I have a heck yes policy, which is I only work with writers with who, after a consult, we both have a heck yes about moving forward with the program, both on the coach side and the client side. If you've been listening to us talk about the program, you're like, this sounds good to me, but I'm not sure. Feel free to sign up for a 40-minute consult. In that consult, we'll talk about your writing goals, your writing challenges, and we'll figure out whether the program is a good fit for you. You'll also get a goal plan in the consult where I'll help you clearly articulate your goals, both outcome and process based for the upcoming year. And you'll get insights into the resources and strategies you need to start moving forward towards your big writing dreams. I'm also going to put another link in the chat. Returning clients, if you're like, I'm interested in this, but I have some questions either about the timing or the fit of the project that I'm working on right now, feel free to book a 20-minute chat with me using the link in the chat that I just put in there. Okay, we're ready to do the drawing. So I'm going to pull up this handy app to do a random name picker and hit the button. Who do we have? Dahlia. Dahlia, you won the free coaching session. So I will be reaching out after class to give you the link to book that. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course, looking forward to meeting with you. And yeah, now I'll stop sharing the screen and take some time to listen. I would love to hear your questions or any specific questions that you have around avoidance that I can help you with. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to switch my screen so I can see you guys. Anyone here have a question specifically around how overcoming avoidance in their writing life? Sarah, straight.
Hi. Um, yeah, I felt very called out in a lot of this, and it was like, oh no. Um, I definitely have a lot of like avoidance stuff happening, but one of the things that I find, I think like Mark was one that you mentioned who had like several stories couldn't get through, and that's kind of where I am right now. I've got a drive folder full of different stories, but the problem that I have is that I like multiple genres and want to write in multiple genres, and I cannot stick with one.
Mm,
Um, and that's where I get really, really stuck. It's just like, oh no, I'm going to work on this one now. Nope, I want to go over to this one.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so fun when you're stuck in one story just to be like, okay, never mind, I'm going to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Because generally, I'm really good at beginnings. And then as soon as I get to the middle, I actually start to grapple with the concerns of the story and it becomes less fun. And so, yeah, the urge to quit and start something new is very high. Um, what I will say to you is a suggestion that I made to Mark when he was dealing with the same thing, is generally whenever you're feeling stuck, your standards are probably here, and what you're creating is here, and it's creating a lot of tension. So I would just say lower your standards, like right down to the ground. And I would say write the crappiest version of that story. One thing that I have found is helpful psychologically is at the top of the document in all caps, write worst version of this story just as a reminder that this is not supposed to be good. So with worst version of the story, just write it all the way through to the end. And generally, you're going to mess up a lot. Um, and that's okay. I really love watching painting videos, and I watched this painting video the other day that I loved, where I think she's talking about acrylics or oils. I'm not familiar because I don't do that. But she's like, basically, she said painting is a process of messing up. You make a mark and you're like, oh, that mark wasn't correct. So I'm going to put another mark over it. I'm going to keep working with it. And her mantra is make a mark so you can make a correction. And I find that so soothing when I'm hesitating. I'm like, I would rather not put anything on this page because I'm sure I will mess it up. I say to myself, make a mark so you can make a correction. So write that bad middle, write that bad ending. Through the process of making those mistakes, you're going to be able to go back and fix it. But you can't really revise something that has never been finished. Um, I do think also it's very hard. When I say this, it sounds simple, like make a mark, make a correction. But I think on a self-esteem level, it's so hard to feel like you're a good writer and then to watch yourself write work that is not good. It te You tend to just be so critical of yourself. And so a lot of what I have worked on for myself and with my clients is this idea of self-compassion. Kristen Neff wrote a whole book on it. It's called Self-Compassion if you want to check it out. But basically to say just because you wrote something today that's not good doesn't mean anything about you as a writer. It actually means like probably you're in process with this in a way that's super helpful. Um, and I also think what's helpful too is to think about this first draft process when you're creating this work that is somewhat hideous as being something completely private that you do not have to share with anyone else. A lot of people think that the first draft is something that you should be able to share with someone else. And I really do not believe that at all. That's not what a first draft is. The first draft is you telling the story to yourself so that you understand what you're trying to say. I never show anything to anyone until it's like third draft, and I'm still pretty embarrassed by third draft. But that first draft is so private. That's just for me to understand what's going on. And when I create that sense of privacy, I allow myself to be weirder and to take bigger risks and to have more fun with things. So I don't like to bring in the audience or what will people think of me in first draft at all, because I find that just crushes things. Is any of that helpful, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
This-
I think we have 8 minutes. I think I could probably take one or two more questions if we've got them. Or is everyone's writing life it's going swimmingly right now? Ah, Suzanne, there we go.
Hi. Okay. Um, so about the whole writing a bad drafts, imperfect drafts, whatever. I was able to do that to write a first draft of a novel, and it's like now it's been like 8 years since I wrote that. And I feel like it's like my perfectionism. I was able to turn it off for that, and I wrote like a terrible draft that I would never show anyone. And some of it's like so sketchy. It's like, only the dialogue and nothing else, or just like, description of room here or whatever. Um, the thing that is hard for me as I try to write the second draft, it's like I want to just now turn on all the perfectionism because I don't, it's hard for me to have the faith that I can keep like just mucking around and writing an imperfect draft and that it's actually going to get better. Like I could do it once, but then
Yes.
but then do I have to keep doing that? It feels like it feels like maybe then I'll just keep writing more bad drafts and there will be no, you
No
know,
end in sight.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah. Yes, that's a really, really good question. When you do allow yourself to create the messy first draft, I think the strong urge is for the second draft to then be the thing that fixes everything. And generally, there are about 3,000 things wrong with the first draft. And so going from chapter one and trying to fix all of those things is really overwhelming. Um, I am of the opinion that in a single draft, you can probably only fix 3 to 4 issues at once. And generally, if you're moving from first draft to second draft, those are going to be the big issues: structure, character, um, what else? Structure, character. My brain is shorting out a little bit, but you get the idea. You're starting with the big things. So I think what can happen, this has happened to me many times, is I start revising chapter one and I'm like, well, I'll just make the first sentence way more beautiful. And then make the second sentence way more beautiful. But actually, what I haven't figured out is like how I'm going to restructure this thing. So for me, a second draft may be, okay, I don't care about sentences because I'm still a long way away from that. Maybe it's me copy and pasting, like chapter 14 needs to now be chapter two. And like that is my work for draft two. So I do understand that that's a little bit unsatisfying because you're not achieving that state of perfection fast enough. But you can go through the drafts much faster if you're like, oh, draft two is just about rearranging. Well, then that draft is not going to take you a year. That draft might take you a couple weeks. And you're like, okay, then the next draft is me working on character development or building out the setting. And that draft might take a little longer, but again, it's not going to take a year because you're only focused on a couple of different things. So some of you who've worked with me before in coaching know about my 30% rule, which is with each successive draft, my only goal is to make it 30% better than it was before. I do find that myself, a recovering perfectionist, I want to make it 100% better than it was before. And what that leads to is very slow, painful progress, a lot of self-criticism, and totally losing sight of the larger structure of what I'm doing because I'm just like, wait, I haven't found the perfect adjective yet. Um, Suzanne, is any of that helpful?
Yes, for sure. I mean, it definitely makes me realize that then it's about being more organized about like what am I trying to do in this revision rather than like I hate all of this and I need to fix it. Like, I get it. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think in an ideal world, when I first started writing books, I was like three drafts. We'll do the first draft, we'll do the revision, and then we'll do the polish, and then we'll be done. And that was a very nice fantasy that I had. And now I'm just like, there are going to be a lot of drafts, but each draft is not going to be a year long. Each draft is not going to kill me. Some of my drafts I go through very quickly because it is just a structural thing. Um, so I think like coming to terms with the fact that there may be 7 to 10 drafts is something, and I'm probably freaking out some people here right now, but that I do think that the first draft takes the longest and that the draft then has sort of like a half-life thing going on. So if, second draft may take 6 months, third draft may take three, then 1.5. Like it's not a perfect science, but it's not like because your first draft took you a year that all successive drafts are then going to also take you a year. So you're now committed to a 10-year process that's going to kill you inside. Okay. I think we are now almost at the hour. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's been great to see familiar faces, new faces. I'm going to send out the recording and a follow-up email after this. If all of the enrollment details for the program will be in that. Um, really good to see you all, guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to respond directly to that newsletter, Jamie at Fresh Ink Austin. I would love to answer any specific questions that came up for you. All right. Thank you, guys.